You check your brokerage account. You've been diligently putting money away for a few years now, maybe 5, maybe even 7. You look at the balance, and it's sitting at, I don't know, somewhere around $80,000. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And you do that quick mental math in your head. You start projecting out. If I keep contributing this much every single month, and I assume a fairly standard historical return, when do I actually hit $500,000? And the number that pops up on that little mental calculator is kind of depressing. It's 10 years away. It's 12 years away. It feels like an eternity. So you close the app, you put your phone down, and you think to yourself, man, am I even doing this right? Does this actually work for normal people? My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. And I was thinking about that exact feeling, the sticker shock of looking at how long it takes to reach a massive milestone, when I realized something kind of counterintuitive about the $500,000 mark. We treat $500,000 invested like it's just a bigger version of $50,000. We think it's just a straight line on a graph that takes a bit longer to walk. But it's not. Hitting $500,000 in the market isn't just a math problem. It's a completely different psychological game. And once you understand why 90% of people never actually get there, why they tap out, or increase their lifestyle, or just lose faith somewhere around year 6 or 7, it actually changes how you look at your own money today. It takes the pressure off the daily grind and shifts your focus to something much, much more important. So, why do most people fail to reach this specific number? It really comes down to a few distinct phases of wealth building that basically break people. The first major hurdle is what I call the desert phase. You know, when you first start investing, there's actually a little bit of a dopamine hit. You set up the auto transfer, you buy your first index fund, and you feel incredibly responsible. You're doing the thing. But then months go by, and months turn into years. And you're putting away, let's say, $1,000 a month. After a year, you've got $12,000 plus a little bit of market growth. It doesn't feel like a life-changing amount of money. You could easily go out and blow $12,000 on a used car or a couple of nice vacations and barely even notice it was gone. This is the period where the math of compounding feels like a total lie. You're doing all the heavy lifting. Literally 100% of the growth in your account is coming from your own sweat, from your own paycheck. The market is just kind of sitting there, barely helping. And human beings are incredibly bad at delaying gratification when there's no visual feedback. We are wired to forage, to hunt, to see immediate results from our actions. When you work overtime, you see the extra money in your next paycheck. When you invest, you just send money into a void and hope the void is nice to you in 10 years. Most people quit in this phase. Not because they don't have the money, but because the friction of daily life is higher than the perceived reward of investing. A car breaks down. A friend goes on a trip to Japan. You want to remodel the bathroom. And you think, well, I'll just pause my contributions for a couple of months. It won't matter. But it does matter because you lose the habit. The desert phase is purely a test of habit maintenance. The only way to get through it is to completely automate it. Take your own willpower out of it. If the money hits your checking account, it should automatically sweep into the investment account before you even have a chance to mentally claim it. You have to trick your present self into forgetting that money exists. But let's say you survive the desert. You grind it out. You hit $100,000. You even push through and get to $150,000 or $200,000. Now you enter the second phase, and honestly, this is where the real trap springs shut. It's lifestyle creep, but it's a very specific, insidious type of lifestyle creep that preys on people who are actually doing well. When your invested net worth hits that $150,000 to $200,000 range, you start to feel a false sense of security. You log into your app, you see a six-figure number, and your brain starts playing tricks on you. You feel wealthy. You start thinking, I'm basically a wealthy person now. I've made it. But here's the reality nobody wants to admit. $200,000 invested does not make you rich. It makes you secure, sure. It's a great emergency fund on steroids. But if you're 35 years old with $200,000 invested, you are still essentially a beginner in the long-term wealth game. You cannot live off $200,000 for the rest of your life. Yet, because the number looks big, people start spending like the finish line is already crossed. They upgrade from a $30,000 car to a $60,000 car because, hey, I've got $200,000 in a market, I can afford the payment. They start taking extravagant vacations. They buy a house that stretches their budget to the absolute limit because their net worth gives them this artificial confidence. I see this all the time. People end up with $200,000 in an investment account, but they also have $600,000 in mortgage debt, $40,000 in car loans, and massive monthly overhead. Their net worth might technically be positive, but their cash flow is suffocating. And when your cash flow is suffocating, you have to stop investing. You can't afford to put money away anymore because it's all going out the door to service the lifestyle that your early investments tricked you into thinking you deserved. You have to actively fight the urge to let your spending rise to meet your invested net worth. You have to keep living like you have $0 in that account for a lot longer than feels fair. Then we get to the third reason people never hit $500,000, and it's the one that breaks the hearts of the most disciplined savers. It's the pain of the drawdown. Once you get past $200,000 or $300,000, the market actually starts doing some of the heavy lifting for you. You put in your $1,000, but in a good month, the market might add $2,000 or $3,000 in growth. It feels amazing. You feel like a genius. But the flip side of that is that when the market goes down, the market takes away way more money than you could ever save in a month. Imagine you've grinded for 6 years to get to $300,000. You've sacrificed. You've driven the old car. You've said no to dinners out. And then, over the course of 3 weeks, the market drops 15%. You open your app, and your balance says $255,000. You just lost $45,000. How long does it take you to save $45,000 out of your paycheck? For most people, that's nearly 4 years of disciplined saving. Gone in 3 weeks. This is where 90% of people absolutely panic and bail. It feels incredibly unfair. You did the right thing. You were responsible. And you got punished for it. The pain of that numerical drop is psychologically about 10 times more intense than the joy of a numerical gain. So what do people do? They sell. They go to cash. They tell themselves, I'm just going to wait until things calm down. But things calm down, the market rallies, and they're too scared to get back in. They miss the entire recovery, and their money just sits there losing to inflation while they try to emotionally recover from the trauma of the drop. To get past $500,000, you have to fundamentally change your relationship with volatility. You have to train yourself to see a $50,000 drop not as a loss of your money, but as the price of admission for the long-term gains. It's like turbulence on an airplane. It's terrifying if you don't understand it, but to the pilot, it's just a normal part of getting to the destination. You have to become the pilot of your own portfolio. And finally, the last reason people fall short is a lack of identity shift. For the first few years of your wealth-building journey, investing is an activity. It's something you do. I am a person who invests money. But to get to that $500,000 mark, which usually takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years for a normal high-income earner, you have to transition from it being an activity to it being who you are. If you view investing as a diet, you will eventually go off the diet. If you view it as a temporary sacrifice to reach a number, the second you hit a rough patch in life, a divorce, a job loss, a health scare, you will abandon the plan because your identity wasn't tied to it. The people who reach $500,000 invested aren't necessarily smarter than the people who stop at $150,000. They just had an internal shift where they stopped seeing their invested money as theirs to spend. It almost becomes this sacred pile of capital that exists for one reason and one reason only, to buy their future freedom. I was talking to a guy recently who had just crossed the $500,000 mark in his mid-30s, and I asked him what changed. He said, I just stopped thinking of it as my money. I view myself as the manager of that money for my future retired self. I would never steal from my retired self. And I think that's a really beautiful way to look at it. When you finally do cross that threshold, when you open your phone and you see a 5 followed by 5 zeros, it's a surreal feeling. But honestly, it doesn't feel like $1 million does. It doesn't feel like, I never have to worry about anything ever again, money. What it feels like is profound, undeniable leverage. It feels like you have built an engine that can finally do some of the work for you. You cross a line where your money is working harder than you are. If the market averages 7 or 8%, that $500,000 is throwing off $35,000 to $40,000 a year completely on its own. You could literally do nothing, and the market would hand you a full-time middle-class salary just for existing. That is the magic of the $500,000 mark. But getting there requires you to survive the desert of the early years where nothing seems to happen. It requires you to have the discipline to not spend your theoretical wealth when you hit $200,000. It demands that you sit through terrifying drawdowns without tapping out. And ultimately, it asks you to change who you are at your core, shifting from a consumer to an owner. If you're sitting at $30,000, or $80,000, or even zero right now, don't look at that $500,000 mark as this impossible mountain. It's not a straight climb up a steep cliff. It's a series of psychological tests. And the tests aren't there to punish you, they're just there to filter out the people who don't actually want it. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to pick the right stock. You don't need to time the market. You just need to decide that your future self is worth more than the temporary comfort of your present self. Set up the automatic transfer. Close the app. Go live your life. And let the math do what the math has always done if you just give it enough time to work.